Helljumpers, Chapter 15, Part 2. Are you sure? The chief asked, echoing Scootaloo's sentiment. Cortana snapped her fingers and the chanting translated to English. I shall light this holy ring, release its cleansing flame, and burn a path into the divine beyond.
Pretty much,
She said smugly as she snapped her fingers again, freezing the hologram. Commander, we've got a problem, Chief said, opening a comlink into the amber clad.
So I hear, but from what I understand, the Prophet will need an object, the Index, to activate the ring. I've located a library similar to the one that you found on the first Halo. If the rings work the same way, the Index should be inside,
Keyes surmised. I bet that the Covenant are thinking the exact same thing, Johnson chimed in.
Then, we'd better beat him to it. Sergeant, extract your men and meet me at the library,
The captain ordered Johnson. Yes, ma'am, he replied, disconnecting his feed to return to the amber clad.
I'll secure the Index, Chief. You take out the Prophet. He's given us all the intel that we need,
She said before also disconnecting her feed. Hurricane, on me, the chief ordered Scootaloo, and the two of them headed out to the structure towards the Prophet's location. The two made their way over to the balconies of the structure towards the main platform, and Scootaloo focused on the close-range enemies with her SMG, while the chief alternated between sniping and supporting Scootaloo at close range. A relatively short fight later, the two reached the platform they were gunning for, and they could see Phantom on approach. The two took cover from the cannons that were mounted under the dropship, and waited for it to drop its troops and leave. They heard two loud thumps as the dropship unloaded its passengers.
Look, hunters,
Scootaloo murmured as the dropship flew away. She looked at the chief, who ended up with an energy sword alongside a beam rifle as a loadout after their fight to get to their position.
I'll distract them while you cut them in half with that thing,
Scootaloo said, pointing at the sword on the Spartan's hip. He nodded, approving of the plan, and headed to the other side of the cover, waiting for Scootaloo to start the distraction. The little Pegasus suddenly burst from her position into the air, firing a few rounds in the direction of the two giants to get their attention.
Hey, you, over here, mother buckers!
The two hunters turned and started to light their cannons. Two streams of superheated plasma flew closely past the Pegasus as she clumsily dodged them, being only a novice flyer. The chief burst from cover, energy sword lit, towards the first hunter, who never saw the Spartan coming as the sword ripped through the unprotected back. The second one saw what happened to his mate and took a furious swipe at the Spartan with its shield. The chief nimbly slid under the swipe of it and jumped up onto the front of the hunter and struck the energy sword into the head and down the body of the alien, landing behind it and firing a shot with a beam rifle into its back for good measure. Scootaloo landed beside the two corpses as the chief retrieved the energy sword that blinked out moments later due to it being depleted. A pelican came overhead carrying weapons with pods in it.
Cortana, the Covenant are getting nosy. I don't want to give away my position, so I'm rerouting a few stragglers back to you. I apologize, these pelicans are all the support that you're gonna get,
Keyes called in over the radio.
Understood, ma'am,
Cortana replied as the pelican dropped its payload and flew over again.
A gondola's launching from the far towers. Big surprise, it's full of Covenant reinforcements,
Cortana added as a gondola started heading over to their platform. The chief swiftly headed up to the weapon pods and grabbed a shotgun and a sniper. Scootaloo went up to the two pods with SMGs in them and attached a second SMG to the magnetic holster under her wing. Dual wielding was nearly impossible for her due to having her second hoof onto the foregrip to stabilize when firing, but having a second full weapon to quickly switch would be beneficial. The chief took up a sniping position and fired a few shots at the gondola, and the two elites that were on there dropped before they even got in range to get a shot off. As the gondola arrived, the two UNSC soldiers burst aboard, eliminating a few jackals and grunts that were still present.
Well, they were nice enough to bring us a ride,
Cortana commented as the chief activated the gondola so they were moving towards the large structure in the middle of the lake. The familiar buzzing of drones came from their backs, and the two quickly occupied themselves shooting down the small pack that had flown over the gondola. After killing the drones, the chief noticed a second gondola coming towards them. Taking out the sniper again, he waited for a shot to present itself. Scootaloo, having none of it, took off and prematurely landed onto the other gondola, rolling her last frag grenades down the ramp into the lower section of the structure. She could hear the aliens screaming as the shrapnel tore through their bodies, and she heard Chief Sniper fire a few times as she headed down into the hold, checking if there were any survivors. Looking around at the mutilated bodies, she stopped to reflect for a moment, a tear rolling from her eyes at the carnage she had caused. She shrugged off the feeling. They were the enemy. Weren't they? Remembering that ponies also did stupid things when they were stuck in a religious belief system, her thoughts got interrupted as Cortana called out to her.
Hurricane, the gondolas are moving again. We're gonna have to leave you behind if you stay on there. Copy that, madam. I'm on my way back.
Scootaloo replied, running back up to the gondola and took flight once more, up to the chief's position. The chief used a sniper to shoot the jackals off of the roof of the large structure before the gondola even arrived, and switched to his shotgun as they headed over to the structure, clearing the single internal room from drones and jackals.
Ah, now I see. There's a submerged section that connects these two towers to the outlying structures. Looks like we're going down, unless you'd prefer to swim,
Cortana said as an elevator was coming up.
Company!
Scootaloo said as she looked down the shaft into the elevator. The chief held a plasma grenade in his hand, and he waited for it to arrive. The moment the doors opened, he lobbed it inside and held his shotgun at the ready. One jackal jumped out to avoid the blast of the grenade, and promptly got a shotgun shell to the face, while the others got caught in the blast from the grenade. Heading down into the water below with the elevator, Cortana started to pick up Covenant transmissions.
I've intercepted a secure transmission from Regret's carrier to something called High Charity. It seems to have been a formal apology to the Prophets of Truth and Mercy. Apparently, Regret jumped the gun when he attacked Earth. He's asking the other prophets to forgive his premature arrival, arguing that no human presence was foretold. So that explains why there were so few ships in his fleet. But it's odd that a prophet would have such bad intel about his enemy's homeworld.
Cortana finished as the two re-emerged into an underwater section of the building. The two quickly cleared the first passageway of grunts before heading onto a larger room. The chief dispatched an honor guard as they made their way towards the room. Two hunters revealed themselves as the soldiers reached the halfway point.
No, not again! God damn it!
Scootaloo said as she noticed the two hulks.
Engage or avoid?
She asked the Spartan. Engage, he replied, jumping in between the aliens with an energy sword he had retrieved from the honor guard. Scootaloo jumped after him onto a hunter, planting a plasma grenade into its neck. The hunter managed to shrug off the small Pegasus off and used its shield as a bat to knock her away into the door at the far end of the room. It aimed its plasma cannon, but before it could fire, the grenade detonated, killing the alien instantly. The chief dealt with his opponent moments later and ran over to Scootaloo to check onto her injuries.
No broken bones? Peculiar.
Cortana commented as she read out the data from Scootaloo's biomonitor.
I've got flexible bones. Dash once explained that it helps Pegasi in the case of high-speed impacts.
Scootaloo recalled.
Hopefully, there's no internal damage because that would be a problem. Nothing on the scanner. You should be good, Private.
Cortana replied.
We should keep moving.
The chief and Scootaloo headed further into the building when they encountered another hallway. Seeing a few disturbances into the light, Scootaloo hoofed her second SMG to the chief, who held it in one hand while the sword rested into the other. Saturating the hall with SMG fire, the two walked forward. Every time they dropped the cloak of an enemy, the chief would shoot forward and kill it with a sword. Making their way over to the other end of the hallway, they found another elevator and took it. Along the way, Cortana intercepted another transmission.
Regret's carrier just received a response from High Charity. A very well-encrypted message from the Prophet of Truth. Here, listen to this.
Your haste has jeopardized the fulfillment of our covenant, threatened our grand design. That you shall be spared a public display of our contempt is thanks only to Mercy in his wise counsel.
Truth, Mercy, Regret. 3 Prophet hierarchs. Killing Regret should shake up the Covenant leadership, but frankly, it sounds like you might be doing Truth a favor.
The elevator came up to a structure again, and the two quickly made their way through it to the outside, assassinating 2 honor guards along the way. Clearing the outside structure as well, they grabbed another gondola and headed over to the temple the Prophet of Regret was located in. Along the way, they took out another gondola that had a few elites on it before continuing to their final destination.
How's it going, you two?
Captain Keyes asked as they approached the temple.
So far, so good. We're approaching the main temple now.
Cortana replied.
Roger that. I'm as close to the library as I can get. There's some sort of barrier. We're trying to find a way around it. I'll keep you posted.
Keyes said, cutting off the comms. The chief used a sniper once again to kill the majority of the grunts and jackals before they arrived, and the rest quickly fell as they stepped onto the building. Their gaze was drawn upwards as they saw a massive Covenant fleet exiting slipspace.
That is the largest Covenant fleet I've ever seen. The largest that anyone's ever seen.
Cortana commented, aghast at the sight of the fleet.
Get inside the temple and kill Regret before it can stop any of us. That thing is massive,
Scootaloo said as she saw a huge space station materialize from slip space. The two quickly made their way inside of the structure, clearing a few elites along the way, and entering the main room.
The Covenant fleet has launched multiple waves of phantoms. Too many for me to track. We don't have much time,
Cortana said, urging the two to work faster. Taking out 2 honor guards as they entered, they quickly moved on to the Prophet's location.
That's the target. Take him out,
Cortana shouted as they got a visual on Regret.
You dare interrupt my sermon?
He shouted at the chief and Scootaloo, and the Pegasus took a shot at him, but the bullet bounced off a shield that was being projected by his chair.
Warriors, attack! The demon and that other heretic must die!
Not having any of it, Chief jumped from the balcony, evading a blast from the chair, and in an impressive display of speed, he latched onto the chair and started beating the living shit out of the Prophet. Not being able to withstand the power of the Mjolnir armor, he slumped into his chair and has fallen.
Bad news. Bad news. The Phantoms are turning around. The fleet is preparing to fire on our position. We need to get out of here,
Cortana reported in. Scootaloo's blood ran cold, as she knew what that meant. Any fatigue she had vanished in a flash as the two ran outside. A large carrier was preparing to open up onto the structure. The two ran as fast as they could from the beam that was steadily closing in on them. The chief jumped off the building into the water as the beam was almost upon them. Scootaloo jumped after him, nearly knocking herself out due to the speed that she hit the water at. Her eyes began to feel very heavy as fatigue set in with a vengeance. Before blacking out, she felt something wrap around her barrel and she heard a voice in the back of her head.
This is not your grave, but you are welcome in it.
In the dream realm, Scootaloo sat up and looked around. She was in some sort of colorful land with various floating buildings and objects scattered around the landscape. And it was raining. Chocolate milk.
I must say, it is nice of you to drop by. Not that you had any choice in it, that is.
A voice came from behind her. Scootaloo spun around to the voice, her eyes going wide.
Discord?
She shouted with malice in her voice. She checked if she still had her weapons, and she did. She pulled her SMG out and she pulled the trigger, only for water to come out at the end of it. Discord was yawning at the futile display Scootaloo was giving. Angered at this, Scootaloo threw away her SMG and let magic seep into her wings. Lightning sprung up from them again.
Generating lightning out of anger, now that's something only Hurricane would be able to do,
Discord said, looking at the display Scootaloo was giving. Lightning arced over the Draconiquist as Scootaloo roughly guided it.
You know, any violence is pointless in the dream world,
he pointed out as the lightning just bounced off of him. Scootaloo let out a scream of irritation and sat down.
What do you want? Tell me I've become some murderer, or tell me how much chaos I've been causing?
Discord chuckled.
Although you've not disappointed in the slightness of those fronts, but that's not why I'm here now.
He walked up to Scootaloo and snapped his fingers. The environment changed so that they were now floating in space, and in the distance, they could see a halo floating with the Covenant fleet, in orbit alongside of it.
You see, there is the super weapon that has, among other planets, Equus in its sights, and there are some idiots that want to fire it.
Scootaloo's brain ground a few gears and she came to a conclusion.
And you're not immune to the effects of this weapon?
No, I'm not.
Discord frowned as he looked at the halo in front of him.
I plan to send some help to the humans in the form of Twilight Sparkle, but then again, who plans anything with chaos magic and expects it to go as he wants?
Wait, but Twilight made the portal on Princess Celestia's request. How are you gonna send her to human space?
Scootaloo asked, still suspicious of the Draconiquist.
Who do you think gave the princess the inspiration for that?
Discord said with a grin.
I left Luna a present in the dream world that I can use to manipulate the minds of ponies. Also, that portal would have collapsed anyway, and although you weren't planned, you did a marvelous job of destabilizing it even faster.
Scootaloo scowled at hearing that information.
So, why are you telling me all of this now?
Discord snapped his fingers again. The scene around them turned to the initial chaotic landscape.
Because I can't contact Twilight Sparkle due to the elements of harmony blocking my access to her mind, and she isn't in a position to help stop the firing of this ring anyway.
The dreamscape rippled in a sickly green. Discord suddenly panicked, unnerving Scootaloo.
Don't trust it. It is as dangerous as the ring itself,
he shouted as the dream collapsed around them, pulling Scootaloo back to reality. On Earth, Scootaloo opened her eyes and looked around. She was being dragged by some sort of tentacle, alongside Chief, who was also being dragged along. The two were being dragged into a large chamber where they were held up by tentacles as a large mess of meat and bones rose up to meet them. Scootaloo ended up paralyzed with fear.
What is that?
Cortana said as she saw the monstrosity. I am a monument to all your sins, it replied in a warped voice, sending a shiver up Scootaloo's spine. An elite was being dragged towards the pair by two more tentacles and eventually held in place. Relax, I'd rather not piss this thing off, the chief told him as he struggled against the creature. The elite took notice of the chief and immediately responded. Demon. The abomination huffed and brought the chief closer. This one is machine and nerve, and it has its mind concluded, it said, running a small tentacle over to the chief's helmet before proceeding to bring the elite closer to him. This one is but flesh and faith, and is more deluded, it said, playing around with the other alien. Finally turning to Scootaloo, it looked over at her. Capable of manipulating neural physics, but yet so primitive.
Kill me or release me, parasite, but do not waste my time with talk,
the elite bluntly said.
There is much talk, and I have listened, through rock and metal and time. Now I shall talk, and you shall listen.
It replied, bringing up two more tentacles, one with a prophet embedded into it, and another wrapped around some sort of machine.
Greetings. I am 2401 Penitence Tangent. I am the monitor of Installation 05.
The machine said, indicating that it was some sort of AI.
And I am the Prophet of Regret, Counselor Most High, Hierarch of the Covenant,
the prophet said, baffling the Pegasus since she had seen him die in the temple. The monitor adorned with a red eye floated up to the chief.
A reclaimer? Here! At last! We have much to do. This facility must be activated if we are to control this outbreak.
Stay where you are. Nothing can be done until my sermon is complete,
the prophet shouted at the monitor, prompting an argument.
Not true. This installation has a successful utilization record of 1.2 trillion simulated and 1 actual. It is ready to fire on demand.
Of all the objects our lords left behind, there are none so worthless as these oracles. They know nothing of the great journey,
the prophet shouted.
And you know nothing about containment. You have demonstrated complete disregard for even the most basic protocols.
This one's containment and this one's great journey are the same.
The creature lowered the two tentacles holding the prophet and the monitor.
Your prophets have promised you freedom from a doomed existence, but you will find no salvation on this ring. Those who built it, this place, knew what they wrought. Do not mistake their intent, or all will perish as they did before.
The chief turned to the elite who had stopped struggling against the creature.
This thing is right. Halo is a weapon. Your prophets are making a big mistake. Your ignorance already destroyed one of the sacred rings, demon. It shall not harm another.
The elite replied with religious zeal, prompting the abomination to speak again.
If you will not hear the truth, then I will show it to you. There is still time to stop the key from turning, but first, it must be found. You will search one likely spot, it said, pointing at the chief. And you will search another. Fate had us meet as foes, but this ring will make us brothers.
Wait, what?
Scootaloo shouted as she was paired with the elite, but before she could say or do anything else, she and the others got teleported.